is epic.
Welcome to this Epic Life podcast, where we explore the connection between building a conscious life and building a conscious team or a conscious business. We also break down 3 powerful permissions with our guests. Are you learning these yet? Number 1, the permission to chill or to find stillness and let that inner voice inside of you speak. Permission to feel all the feels or embrace our full humanity. And finally, 3, permission to glow in the dark. I will be your host. My name is Christopher Carter. You may call me KC. I'm a coach for founders and executives and meditation teacher for organizations. I'm so excited to introduce you to my friend and this week's guest. Today we're sharing a special episode for International Coaching Week, which is a week-long celebration by the International Coaching Federation. What do you think about when you think about coaching? Maybe it's an athletic coach who has shaped your life off the field, or a music teacher who helped you fall in love with practicing. Maybe you're thinking about coaching others professionally or hiring your own coach to accelerate your projects. Maybe, like me, you just want all of your Facebook friends to stop talking about coaching already. Coaching has been such a major focus in my life over the last few years. I started coaching thinking it was one thing, and in deepening my training, going for certification, and coaching 10 to 20 hours a week, I started realizing it's something infinitely deeper than, did you do the thing? What's in the way? Something else I discovered was that in order to be a great coach, you need to be receiving great coaching. We are always in process, not only with building our own projects, but in generating the breakthroughs that create all of it. Every client you serve requires the coach to expand the container a little further, to hold more space, or to show up more fully and be with whatever comes up. I committed all of 2018 to a year-long training, and on the second day of that training, I was assigned a mentor coach. I've been working with today's guest every single week since. Bob Conlin has coached me through some pretty deep internal struggles and the outer expansion of my business over the last 18 months. Projects that Bob has directly impacted have been this podcast. I honestly whined about it for years before Bob made me get out of the way. My first TEDx talk, selling out and designing our fall client retreats, writing my book, building a team, signing my largest annual contracts, and many others. On the personal, family, and spiritual side, there are too many small and gigantic breakthroughs to mention. Bob Conlin is the perfect guest to showcase the power of coaching, and also what deep, heart-centered work it can be. You'll hear the guy doesn't hold anything back, whether in sharing his own vulnerability or exposing his clients to theirs. Bob reminds me of a loving description that Paramahansa Yogananda made of his guru, Swami Sri Yukteswar. He said, "Softer than the flower where kindness is concerned, stronger than the thunder when principles are at stake." That's Bob. He'll be your bud 1 minute in celebrating a win, and then sit on your back in a camel clutch position like the Iron Sheik until you drop your story and create what you said you wanted to create. A little bit about Bob's background. Bob will soon be a credentialed professional certified coach by the International Coaching Federation and holds an MBA from Benedictine University and a baccalaureate from Purdue University. He has completed Level 1 training in the Gottman Method, which is a research-based approach to relationships. His philosophy and superpower in his coaching comes down to heart and relationships. In my experience, he is a warrior for connecting me to my heart and bringing light to relationships in all areas of life. Bob is the author of the forthcoming book, Why Your Relationships Suck, How to Create Strong Relationships with Courage and Heart. He also shares a couples coaching practice with his wife, Shauna Moeller, a powerful coach in her own right. I'd highly recommend them for couples. Just Google We Meet Again Coaching. Our theme today is vulnerability. We get into the predictable default patterns we use to sabotage our success. Many of those weeds develop in early childhood, so we need to take a trip back and share what shaped us as adults and as coaches. I'm working on a personal breakthrough around letting people into my process more versus sharing only the shiny, well-produced, and well-edited facade. This Epic Life podcast welcomes my coach, Bob Conlin. Bob, how are you doing today?
I am doing awesome.
What's coming up for you right now, being in conversation around the theme of vulnerability? Where do you think this is going to lead us?
I think it's going to be a journey of where we started and where we're going, and ultimately like where we're at right now in our relationship. And Super excited to jump into it.
It's kind of a road not traveled in many ways because there are many governing best practices and regulations almost around coaching, and we're going to be breaking out the walls here in this conversation. So my intention is to start with you sharing your amazing story into coaching and how you became the powerhouse coach that I know you to be. And along the way, I want to acknowledge you for many of the shifts that have taken place in my own life over the last year. I also want to empower you, or either of us, to play the coaching card at any point and to turn the tables and ask questions and get curious about certain things.
I'm super excited and nervous if that dynamic were to shift in our conversation today. You playing the coach hat with me, having been my client for however long now.
Almost 18 months. Yeah.
I'm super excited. Like, what would Casey actually coach me on? And I'm like, what reflections does he have for me? And it's a little awkward and a little exciting at the same time.
We thrive in awkward situations in this epic life. What do we have in common? I feel so much of your story is mirrored in my story and vice versa. Kind of with that lens on, what do we have in common that we keep discovering?
I'm always surprised at how literally similar our pasts have been, all the way down to the music that we listened to growing up, or the toys that we played with, or the bands that we saw in concert, like whatever it was. I'm always like, man, I feel like Casey and I have literally lived the same life. We're similar in age, we're similar in music taste, we even both play bass guitar. All of these things that, not knowing you and building this relationship, but not knowing you at first, would have never had any clue of how similar we are. So I think some of the things that immediately come to mind are our experience of our childhood as we were growing up. I think the craving or the desire for love, really, ultimately. So not to get super deep here right away, but
the theme is vulnerability. Yes. Don't hold back.
This experience of wanting more love or acceptance or permission to be expressed as children, right? I remember, I have this perfect example whenever I think what that experience actually was for me was, I think in second or third grade, I brought an instrument home from the band room with the ask of my mother, hey, they want me to play this instrument in band because they said my hands would be good to hold a French horn. I want to play this. And she's like, well, that costs money, which we don't have. Take it back. And it was like, that story is like the version of this child wanting to do this thing, to express themselves, to try something new and different and be challenged, and then be told no or wrong or take it back or not now.
In some way, and we'll get into some of the terminology here, was that one of the birthplaces of your survival mechanism or something like it?
Yeah, definitely. Probably where in that moment I learned that it wasn't accepted or okay to bring my needs to my parents or, to any authority figure. What I also learned was, well, if they're not going to meet my needs, I might as well just tear it all down.
Right. Screw it all, let it all burn.
Complete anarchy. If you're not going to give me what I need, see ya, fine. I'll make sure I still leave a lasting impact in some way.
Wow. That story places your creative expression on the other side of money. In some way. And it resonates with me. The birth of my survival mechanism was, my mom's a very accomplished artist. She can draw anything by hand, freehand. And I was buying at the school bookstore in elementary school, I was buying these Garfield folders, and I would trace them to show her how well I could, quote unquote, draw Garfield, just to show my mom, like, look, I'm an artist too, right? So she put up with this for a couple of days. And then on the third day, she said, tracing is not art. But it was the way that it landed that made me think, or made me process it as, I will prove to you what kind of artist I can be. And it just started off this whole lifetime of overachievement and overbaking and overproducing things, Even down to that. I didn't know that story from you, but it is pretty similar.
The other thing I was just reminded of, in the 80s when the Rubik's Cube was super hot and everyone got one for Christmas.
Did you take the stickers off, or did you pop them out?
I did.
You gamed the cube?
I did. I would hide in my bedroom and literally peel the stickers off of the Rubik's Cube and then place them all back on, and then run back out of my room and show the adults, whether it was my parents or my neighbors or my dad's friends or whoever, look what I did. It eventually came out that I was a complete fraud.
You're a charlatan of the cube.
Yes, charlatan of the cube. So then it was just like utter devastation. I share that because I couldn't authentically express myself with what I wanted to do. So I had to connive or cheat my way to get some type of recognition that wasn't authentically me. Then I got called out for it. That's like one of the best examples of pretty much how I lived my adult life then was trying to prove my worth or prove my ability in some other way to gain the recognition and support from someone else.
I'm often equally parts jealous and curious about the number of acronyms after your name on LinkedIn, right? You are way too qualified to spend any time with me, certainly. But what's that all about?
It's still not enough. I joke it lovingly as part of, like, I call it the alphabet soup after my name. It's just part of feeding into that context or belief that no matter where I'm at, I still have to be at a higher level. And I have to earn it, and I have to get this certification or this acknowledgement, something that's going to prove to you that I can provide value, or prove to you that I'm worth something. I remember I was getting ready to finish up my undergrad, and I was considering going into, I'm a registered nurse. Well, my first career was as a registered nurse, and I was considering going into advanced nurse practitioner school, and I literally had a glimpse of clarity. It was like, well, what's after that? Why would you go and do that? Once you get there, it's still not going to be enough, right? And I just had this moment of clarity that had me pause at a moment and really look at what is my true intention behind it.
Or just an awareness of how insatiable that thing was.
Yeah. These parts of us that we have that are typically connected to a critical or judgmental side of us, this little voice that we have in our head. One of my survival mechanisms is called the world-class F-up, which means that, I'm this world-class individual, and no matter what I do or what I take on, I'm still going to screw it up, or I'm still not enough. Or
I'm glad you touched on that, because when you do enough coaching or you spend enough time in coaching conversations with Bob Conlin, you become acutely aware of your relationship to not enough. So like I'm touching my nose right now in recognition of another similarity. One of my survival mechanism names that you helped anoint me with, world-class white trash. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
I shake hands with kings and I hang with CEOs and executives, and there's part of me that will never transcend the suburban weirdo little corner of the earth I grew up in.
Yep.
It's funny how enough chases us throughout our lives.
It's that negative, disempowering belief that so many of us have and struggle with, that if we had the opportunity to just, one, first get aware of it, two, get responsible for it, and then three, use it to our advantage in some way. The world-class trailer trash, that person, the trailer trash part, you can connect with people on a level that, maybe some other people can't. Like, relating to yourself in certain or specific ways will allow you to connect with people that others may not even have access to. Yeah, so we talk about like using our survival mechanisms on purpose as a tool versus like as the thing that beats us up or keeps us down or tells us that we're not good enough or we're doing it wrong or who the heck are we to live this life that we're living? Which is one of my favorite questions to ask you is, it sounds like there's this judgment or this assessment of like, who am I to have this life that I have? The successful business, the beautiful family, a beautiful marriage, the ability to impact thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. Who the heck are you, Mr. White Trash?
And I get to slap the bass sometimes.
Yeah.
Once in a while.
Yep. Yeah. All that. Like, who the heck are you to have a life like this? Like, how dare you?
Everyone's got their version of it. And that conversation usually goes in many different ways. It usually arrives back at helping me see that who am I not to, and honoring all of those quirks that allow me to be who I am, honoring all of it. I may have told you this right before our retreat last fall, where I called Bob after my retreat, by the way, the Integrated Life Retreat we hold in Encinitas every November. It's always such a huge point of arrival and point of departure for me because it allows me to be a spiritual teacher for a few full days with witnesses, and it's powerful, and people feel it, including me, so much so that I called Bob afterwards, and our whole coaching conversation was me sobbing for 40 minutes. Do you remember that?
Absolutely.
Do other people do that with you?
When people allow themselves to finally see their impact and to see what it's like living their life from their purpose and from who they want to be, when they actually see themselves it's such a profound experience, and it's like magic because it's just there and then it's gone. You know, it's like, it's just such this beautiful moment. And I think one of my questions to you during that time was like, how will you remember, or how will you keep this feeling, this moment empowered moving forward, to take this as like a catalyst into what's next? You know, when the white trash trailer park or, you know, comes up and wants to take you out again. But it was such a, it was just so like, I don't know, lovely to be with you in that moment, because there was just such this proud little boy showing the picture up that he drew. Look, I am a good artist. And just so proud of himself and like what he was able to accomplish and take on. That's one of the conversations I remember vividly from our time working together, was that moment.
You know, one of the many honors and privileges of coaching is being with people in those moments of realization. Mm-hmm. And also on the other side, on the receiving end, as client, to have somebody to share that with. I, of course, share those moments with my wife and my kids, but to have somebody that sees all the work and the struggle and the resistance that goes into creating it, to then celebrate what's on the other side. I remember very clearly the trigger heading out of the retreat for me was we end up full circle on these cliffs in these meditation gardens in Encinitas, looking at the ocean, and the sunlight is blinding coming off the waves, and there's surfers down below. Paramahansa Yogananda's vibes are everywhere. You cannot help, at least I can't anyway, help but feel the presence of God up there. And the message just seemed to be to release those feelings of unworthiness and to just receive. Like, so every crashing wave was receive, 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 and the outgoing waves were release and receive. And it turned into a little bit of a mantra for me and a little bit of a reminder. And that was my practice that you gave me, was how to create kind of a touchstone out of it where I could come back into realization if I take myself back to those cliffs, looking at that water, giving me that message.
That's awesome. And I remember going into that retreat, someone on your support team bailed or something last minute, and you were just like, in total freak out mode. It's all going to crash down. Why am I doing this? And oh, this is so hard. And it was just funny to contrast how going into the event versus on the other side of it. Yeah. Like stepping through that, what we call in coaching, like a breakdown, or when things don't go off the way that we would expect them to do, you know, still walking through them, still moving through them, and then getting the goal that's on the other side of walking through that fear or resistance or judgment, assessment.
Or just the practice of how to be with all of that uncertainty. Like, I don't know how the food is going to show up because my friend didn't want to cater. Let's pause for a second and go into the 3 permissions, because I love your interpretations of these. On This Epic Life, we love to have our guests explore this idea of 3 permissions as access to our highest expression. And these are in no particular order, really. Interpret them however you wish. The permission to chill, the permission to feel all the feels or embrace our full humanity, and the permission to glow in the dark. Which one of those, if any, resonate with you today? And what do you take, what comes up for you around the permission to chill, feel the feels, or glow in the dark?
Yeah, I would say the one that resonates the most with me is permission to feel all the feels. The permission to chill, I immediately go to, but there's so much to do. What if my business stops growing? What if my relationship stops? Like, I immediately go into strategy on what's going to happen if I chill, right?
And it's your first full year out of the corporate life, and who am I to chill?
Right.
I have some curiosity around there. We'll come back to that.
Yeah, awesome. Please do. And then like the permission to glow in the dark, I find that allowing myself to feel all the feels would then give me access to glowing in the dark. So when I think of permission to feel all the feels, what I really fundamentally get down to is allowing myself, without judgment, without interpretation, permission to allow my emotion to come up without judgment. So I learned very early on that any emotion, like those that we attribute to negative emotions, so sadness or, crying or grief or isolation, those types of behaviors were very much frowned upon. There was no place for them growing up. So the antidote to that was slap a happy face on it, get over it, keep moving on, man up, yep. And, get over it. There was very much like a survivor mentality in my family. My father had died when I was very young at the age of 7, and it just destroyed the family. And it was a very traumatic, devastating experience. And in order to survive, I think, that experience, that my mother had to just move on. She had to shut it down and just help her 2 children, my brother and I, survived that experience, and she had to survive her grief and survive, the trauma that she experienced in losing the love of her life. And the only way that could happen was just shut it down and keep moving forward. Early on in my like journey of transformation and working with one of my first coaches, I got to this point where I had so much judgment on the sadness that I was experiencing, and primarily around my relationship with my significant other, my romantic relationships. I had all this sadness around the end of that relationship, basically. I had been in a relationship for 7 years. I had a lot of sadness around it, and I had a lot of judgment around with that sadness.
Like you couldn't just move on, or you couldn't
just or like it was wrong to be feeling what I was feeling.
Yeah.
Right. And my coach said something profound with me in that time. And her name's Jen Shaw. She's a brilliant coach, coach of the bold thing. And she said, part of being a human being is to allow the full expression of your emotion, regardless of what it is. And it was one of those lightning bolt moments that just hit me like, there's a woman that's telling me it's okay to feel what I was feeling, right? So I think that triggered or very much cared for some little boy inside of me that was just wanting some woman to acknowledge that whatever I was feeling was okay. And that really started, I think, allowing the evolution of how I experienced myself in my emotion, And as a man, too, it's like, oh, get over it, muscle up, get over it, bro. Like,
you
whatever
got
it
this.
is. Yeah, you got it. Oh, it's going to be fine. Yeah. There's more fish in the sea, or like whatever it is. It allowed me to be in my sadness and not have to have my sadness be fixed. Just be sad. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be confused. Whatever it is, just be with it. And that permission to express those feels or feel all those feels in the moment then allowed me to actually experience higher levels of joy and love and intimacy and pleasure and like all these things that I had been craving and wanting for so long in my experience of life. So it's like embracing the dark, quote, the dark side of my experience and my emotions allowed me to embrace and celebrate so much more in my life in terms of joy and celebration and love and things like that.
So that breakthrough and giving yourself permission to feel all the feels was in service of what, or gave you access to what over the last few years? Like, what have you noticed coming on the heels of that breakthrough?
I feel like ultimately it's so perfect. I had a very successful career in healthcare, both on the clinical side as well as the administrative side. And when I found coaching and knew like this was my reason for being on the planet, right? I'm meant to coach people. I'm meant to support people in a profound way that's going to help them move their lives forward, their relationships forward. And it had been about 2.5 years of me wanting to step fully into that, realize that fully as solely like my means of income, right? Like this is my career. We have this question in coaching, if you could get paid for your passion, what would you be doing? And it's
right.
like, I would be coaching. And then all of the fear, judgment, interpretation comes in. It's like, no, that's a terrible idea. Why would you leave this job? And blah, blah, blah. And it gave me the ability to act outside of the feelings, or it gave me the ability to act outside the fear. It had me normalize the fear. My coach at the time was like hilarious. He's like, yeah, it's a terrible idea to leave your job. It's terrible. You have a steady income. You have a steady, very predictable schedule. You're very good at it.
Health benefits.
You got all the benefits. Right. You got matching 401k, like all the things that you could want possibly in a career I had in this position. And he's like, it's not about whether it's a good idea or not. It's about what do you want? What's the experience that you want to be creating? What's the impact in your own life and the lives of others? And it was really to be Bob as a full-time coach in the world. And it was just this light bulb moment where I was like, I'm never going to feel good about making this decision. So now what?
Yeah.
So now what are you going to do about it? And at this point, my business was taking off. My responsibility at work was taking off. I was basically working like 3 full-time jobs.
Yeah.
And
You're super involved in accomplishment coaching training.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like my well-being was in total breakdown. I was overweight and struggling and not sleeping well and not eating well, like all the things. And I was like, my life literally depends on me making a decision, and the things that helped me get over that hump was normalizing the fear, It's never going to feel good. So now what?
Yeah.
And then looking at, well, my experience, right? No one's going to take away everything that I've learned up to this point in my life and my career. Am I willing to be uncomfortable, step into the fear, and launch this business, or do I want to keep status quo and see how it goes? You know, if I had even a 20% chance of being successful towards my passion, my dream, would I be willing to do that? And if that fails, go back to a career that I'm really good at and have tons of experience in. It helped me realize I really had nothing to lose. I can go try this, and if I fail completely, utterly fail, fall on my face, I can always go back to doing what I did. To even give myself, again, permission to even explore that or allow that, I had to feel all the feels.
It sounds like even to notice, even to really be clear on what the options are, when you're in your body and in your feelings and in your heart, your body's like this sensitive instrument that God gave you to even know what you want, really. I mean, your body was telling you in many ways, reject the career or pause it at least, right?
Yep.
And we still figure out day to day if it's all going to be okay. Maybe that's a myth. To get to that point of taking the leap and knowing that it's always going to be messy.
Yeah.
Does this ever show up for me, Robert?
It's funny you asked that question of you, because I was just about to ask it as well.
Yeah, how does this show up for you?
Yeah, like where is that showing up in your evolution right now?
I thought it'd be fun to have this conversation around our first couple sessions because you were assigned to me through the program as my coach. I was heading out of the first weekend of this training just feeling kind of exhausted, going to meet my family on vacation, I felt totally dismantled and judged based on, just they trigger you right out of the gate in very powerful ways. And I thought, I felt like they gave me the bouncer. Like you might as well have this giant staff shirt on to help wrangle me and keep me in the program because I just wanted to bounce the hell out. Like maybe I don't need this anyway. Maybe I'm perfectly fine with the coaching practice I have or whatever myth I was telling myself. So by the time we got on our first call, which I think was during my vacation, I want to know what you recall from that conversation or how it went or what your first impression of working with me was.
I think my first interaction with you was excited to be working with you, like the pleasantries, and then you're like, oh, hey, I'm actually going on vacation, so I can't talk for a couple of weeks, and here, let me just send you my scheduling link and then just put some time on my calendar. And then you bounced, and I was like, this is going to be interesting. It had me curious it was a bit of a power dynamic right off the bat is how I was like perceiving it. You. And I'll be totally responsible for my stuff too. Knowing who you were, like what you've already been up to, the impact that you had, I was like, this guy's up to some cool big stuff. It was just interesting how the initial relationship started off almost like a push-pull.
I remember feeling that I hope they chose a good rodeo rider because I'm going to be like a bucking bronco for a little while. Like I kind of knew I was resisting everything. And obviously I was there because I knew I needed to transform and change. I hope that became evident. I was very humbled by that entire process. Yeah. And I was there till the last minute on the last day.
Yes, you were.
I think I remember feeling when I met you, okay, here's my stuff. Good luck. Have fun.
Yeah.
And that's not really the best attitude to generate awesome coaching results.
I remember our first session, you had mentioned that there's times when Guru, right, your spiritual belief in Guru, Yogananda, that he puts people in your life to make a difference for you.
At very specific
times. And you had come to the realization that I was one of those people in your life at that time. It was just very touching for me to be held in that esteem, after our first call. And like going into the call too, I was, I've been a coach for about 3 years at the time, and starting a new year, so I had all the feels around it. I had all the survival mechanism telling me things, and going into that conversation, I was like, am I going to be able to make a difference for this guy? Am I going to be able to make a difference for this man? And I felt like after that first call, it was like, this is going to be just fine. We're going to work this out. And it's funny, like from those first couple interactions to where we sit now today, just how completely
totally reinvented, transformed
that is. Yeah, where it's almost like a like a brotherhood. I don't know how else to explain it. Like it's like family.
And like a dance. Sometimes it can feel like a knife fight at the end of the Beat It video. But for the most part, like a good coaching conversation, I feel like you simultaneously anticipate it because you know you need it, but you also simultaneously, you don't dread it, but you're also like, oh, what am I in for today? What's he going to see?
Yeah.
You know, and that's how I know that they're going to be quality, but they always over deliver in terms of helping me get elevation on my stuff, helping me see where I'm really coming from, making more empowered choice, get the great practices. I just feel like you've done an extraordinary job of helping me see me. It's such a sacred privilege to even be in the room with people, to have that opportunity to help them see themselves. Like it's like holding up the magic mirror and saying, like, do you see how powerful you are? Mm-hmm. Remember, remember, remember. And all of those teachers and coaches and mentors that Guru drops at the right time, they're all some different manifestation of that. They're to help me or anyone get from this level to that level. And I look at you as a true shepherd on my path in that way. Just by you being willing to play and practice your skills every week, that's where I see the artist and the musician in you, honestly. Mm-hmm. From day one, I felt that first call you mentioned, I think I deferred to my faith in God or Guru to put me with the right person and just know, all right, I'm surrendering. I was still surrendering at that point. From that point on, I felt we could build something really lasting and powerful.
In our current sessions too, and by the way, you know, Casey and I have a permission to talk about our coaching sessions.
Yeah, there's usually confidentiality.
Yes, that we would cover, but you know, how I approach it now is if I were to ask one question of Casey today, what would that question be that would make a difference in his life today? It's something I've been practicing in my coaching with you and with my other clients. Like if I had one question to ask, what would it be? I have a list of Post-its on a painting I have, which funny enough is like a painting of all these old Sanskrit sayings that talk about unity and belief, and I have some Post-its on it, and all of the Casey questions are up there, and they just make me giggle when I ask them or I look at them.
What is Guru asking of you today?
Do
any of them involve the word show pony?
Yeah.
What does being a show pony get you?
Yeah.
What do you mean by show pony when you ask me about my show pony thing?
There was like a performance in the space that came up, and reflecting, I think, to you that how your performance was received dictated and determines your value and impact.
Yeah.
Right? So it was like this song and dance of like, hey, everyone look at me and everyone like me.
Look, I traced a picture of Garfield.
Yes, and then if you like and love me, then yay, I'm doing it right and I can be happy in my life. And it was, you know, I think it was like, you know, who are we talking to here? Are we talking to the show pony? Are we talking to Casey? Like, what's going on here? And just getting curious about, like, what if we could drop the performance? What if we could drop the needing to be liked? And what kind of impact would you be having, or the power that you'd be able to step into if you were saying the things that you saw, impacting the people that you wanted to impact, you know, spreading the teachings that need to be spread and to whom and stuff like that. Yeah.
It's funny. And that feedback at different times, depending on how it came to me last year, I was resisting the hell out of it because it would usually come in front of a room full of all of my colleagues and all of the other master coaches. And it would arrive like, every time you open your mouth, Casey, it sounds like you worked out the words on paper, or it sounds like you rehearsed them. You know, just talk to us. And I was just getting super defensive. And I started realizing, or you helped me realize over and over and over, that I was pitting my humanity against my spirituality.
Yeah.
That was like central to, I was using all of this inner work as an excuse to judge being human. Mm-hmm. So it was almost like a adult version of judging yourself for feeling the feels. I would talk about being human as something separate than what I am.
Yes.
It's just craziness, right?
Yeah.
And my whole life's work is around integration. Tell me a little bit about how you think about integration, how it shows up for you, and how it shows up for our favorite childhood fantasy figure, Voltron.
When I think about integration, it's really about connecting the dots of who I am, who I'm being everywhere, right? So how I show up in my business, how I show up in my marriage and my friendships and my creative expressions, that they're literally all of the same version or expression of me.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm not having to show up in my business as a show pony or having to perform who I am as a coach. I'm not having to hold a brave face or be strong when I'm not feeling strong for my wife and my marriage, or that I can own my creativity as a musician and, write the song that I think no one will listen to or like whatever it is. If I'm relating to myself as simply who I am, like I'm Bob, there's no other version of me on this planet that I know of. Simply by that, there is a assumed gift that I have.
Like inherent value everywhere.
Yeah, right.
Voltron everywhere.
The thing I love about Voltron, does your audience know who Voltron is? I think
you should explain it.
It's a cartoon from the 80s?
Japanime, 80s cartoon.
Yeah. So Voltron is the accumulation of 5 separate robots, essentially, which are in the form of lions. Right, so there's 5 separate lions. Each lion has its own unique weapon or power that it utilizes.
So there's like a water lion, a fire lion, an earth lion, a one from the woods. I forgot all their special powers, but yeah, they're all very different colors, different.
When the biggest threat comes, so as Voltron defends the universe, when the biggest threat comes, Voltron needs to assemble into one single robot as its most powerful version of itself to then go and defeat the threat and bring, safety and peace back to the universe. So they have to get connected in a way, spiritually, emotionally, physically connected in a way that would bring the robot into one.
You have to integrate.
Right.
Integration practices.
Yeah. So if I'm like integrating all of who I am in all of the arenas that I'm playing in life, so again, in my marriage, in my business, and the way I take care of myself and love myself in my creative expressions, if I were to integrate all of that simply just by being who I am authentically everywhere, that there's more power. There's more access to power so as to then go take on life, to go defeat the threat, whatever it is, to go create what's next in my own life.
7 years ago, I released the Full Life Integration Manifesto, and that's really what launched This Epic Life, was I felt I needed a framework or just a perspective on how things work. Or it just became very evident to me. It felt like a download that there are 5 non-negotiables: soul, vitality, family, art, and work. And we're all divisible in those ways. And even if you don't believe in God, there is a definite sensation of having a relationship to your higher self, to know your highest and best versus your convenient, what we call survival mechanism, right? The work over the last 7 years has been to integrate these and to kind of see if I was full of crap when I launched that, to try to live this way. And a couple months ago, I was talking to Bob in New York City. I'll never forget this. I was taking my coaching call at a Barnes & Noble on the Upper West Side, and I saw this giant reissued Voltron Lego set with like 2,300 pieces, and it was so epic and it was so 80s looking. I'm like, it's Legos and it's Voltron. Like my head was exploding. That day I was having my coaching call with Bob, and he said, what's next for you? I was kind of being wimpy around my requests that day. And it ended up coming out that I wanted to generate very specifically a handful of $30,000 to $50,000 contracts in rapid succession. And it didn't seem foreign to me, but I have been shifting gears from being a consultant into more of just a full-time coach. So I'm like, what does 30 to 50K just for coaching look like, from one client? And we all have to figure out what that looks like and how to price it. And you made me declare it that day on a Tuesday. On Friday, on my flight back, the contract came in, and it really manifested out of nowhere. And I do believe it was out of the power of declaration. Declaration is, I will create what by when. And the universe conspires to help you deliver it because you're out of the way of like, oh, think about maybe generating this by this date, all those fishy goals versus just declaring. But that declaration got fulfilled. So that night on Friday, I took Frankie out to a Barnes & Noble nearby, and we came home with that Voltron, and I built it, and Bob was so geeked out / jealous of it that you went out and got it like literally you ordered it from Amazon. You got it on Monday. I released a video of my family building it in rapid speed, but to watch how much joy I got to meet you as a child, which was pretty fun because you wouldn't stop texting me pictures of you with this Lego robot. It was borderline weird, but like super entertaining. Do you still feel that way when you see the Voltron?
Yeah, I still have an affinity to what Voltron represents there because it was, I love that you mentioned like what it was like to be me as a little kid. Energetically, you could literally see that inner child start to be expressed in the adult man. And it was what Voltron represents now. It's on my shelf it's like right next to my monuments and accolades from everything in life. It's right next to all of that stuff.
Oh, and it looks so much cooler than everything. It's super colorful and super gigantic. I show it to everybody who comes over to the house. They have to touch it.
Where would you say your next level of integration is, or how you're resisting it?
I think my next level of integration is around continuing to deepen my practice as coach and to be coach everywhere. Be coach as father, be coach as yogi, through all the non-negotiables, really. Be coach as author, writing the book, developing the podcast, expanding the platform. And when I talk about the platform, it's in no means like a marketing thing for me. It's really about impact. Mm-hmm. Being able to be with the impact on just a different level, but not being attached to it. Having This Epic Life be its thing and separate from Chris, husband of Gail, or father of 3. It's about also honoring the relationship with God and Guru in all things, and not having that be something that I use to keep me separate from people or special or weird, because I know the language around that can seem whatever, but to just find the joy in practicing the teachings. The last thing to close the loop on the Voltron thing, you were so instrumental in making me celebrate. Mm-hmm. So it's like, it's not enough to have the breakthrough and to create the thing. You have to honor it and celebrate it. You held me to purchasing a harmonium, and I did that a couple weeks. I finally got it last week, but to deepen chanting and practice and celebration, that's a huge integration point, because it's music, it's soul, it's family. Like, kids sit down, there's a vibration in there where the dogs just stop what they're doing and they rest their bodies on it, and I'm just pumping this little organ and singing chants, and the kids sit down and start singing with me, and they want to play, and more it's going to look like that, except with not only my family but many families.
So I think what I'm most present to, and how things have been going for you, is the level of resistance, or the responsibility of you take on when your resistance comes up, is like close to impeccable. The resistance will always be there, especially if you're playing this game of expansion, which you have been certainly over the last year, like expanding in every aspect of your life. Like, the resistance is going to be close behind that's going to pull you back or tell you not or don't. And I think the level of responsibility you've taken on for that, and the level of faith that I have, is the thing that helps pull you through. It's just been beautiful to watch, and to just acknowledge you for expanding and growing and taking on all the things, even when they don't feel good or you're scared of what's going to happen.
I don't want to wear that facade of I got this anymore, because when I'm able to remove that mask, people are more than willing to step in and open their heart and say, how can I support you? What do you need? And that I got this thing has just been debilitating for so many men around us, like, I don't know if it's an old generational thing or what. I'm glad you brought up the resistance, because it has to become your dancing partner. There's no other way to do it. I
like the level of support required to live a fully expressed life, to help support you in what's next. The thing I found in my own journey is how much power is accessible through vulnerability.
Yeah.
Looking at vulnerability as weakness, or that you're going to think less of me, or I'm going to shame myself, whatever it is. Like, when I've stepped in, and when I do step into saying and being the most vulnerable version of myself, I'm always constantly surprised at what that gives me access to, not only me and those around me as well. Like, literally opening up an entire room to connect to their heart, or having a very head-based conversation with the client and just sharing something vulnerable from my own life with them, and next thing you know, they're tearing their heart open and sobbing on the phone and getting connected to what they really want.
And we have, just to come full circle, let's do a couple Bob-isms.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, so this is one piece of wisdom or insight that you would offer an aspiring particular person, okay? What's one piece of wisdom or insight you would offer somebody who needs to access or empower more vulnerability in their life?
Say the thing that you're thinking. as uncomfortable as it is, especially in our relationships. I love when my clients find love for the first time or for the first time in a long time, and encouraging them to step into saying that, sharing that with their partner. So if you're thinking, feeling it, say it.
What piece of wisdom or insight would you offer an aspiring coach?
One of my coaches talks about, as a coach, to be in process everywhere in my life. And what that means is to simply be moving my life forward in all the ways and areas that would make a difference.
What would you offer somebody who's considering hiring a coach or shopping coaches, vetting through coaches for the right fit? What would you offer them?
Explore and find out who you can build a relationship with, right? This person is a tool, a structure for you to create what's next. My assertion is, and my belief is, that anything can be said if you're in sufficient relationship with another individual. If I'm not in relationship and I point to a bold reflection or a big scary thing, someone may take that as criticism and hit the trail and run away. If I'm in sufficient relationship with that individual and I've built a relationship, then anything can be said, and know that it's from love and support and encouragement and curiosity. Energetically, some people just don't mix. That's my belief. So ensure that you can build a relationship with this person and that they kind of scare you a little bit too, maybe. Be curious, see if you can build a relationship with them, and see if they're the structure that's going to challenge you as well as support you at the same time.
Something that came up for me, just to tack one little thing on the end, was don't hire anybody because you think they can fix you. Yeah. It's not their job. It's not possible. Find somebody that can unleash you. I just like to come full circle by acknowledging you, Bob. Thank you for your time today and your wisdom and your heart, but also on behalf of my family, seriously, thank you for the continued commitment to my work and to me and to all my work serves. You're like a true brother and fierce ally, so thank you.
It's been an honor and privilege to work with you, and I'm super excited for what's next, and getting to see your impact increase exponentially with the community that you're so privileged to serve has been, it's been truly an honor.
Do me a favor, say hello to your beautiful wife, Shauna, for me. I love her to death.
Yeah, will do.
And thanks so much to all of you for spending a little time with us. If you know anyone who could benefit from this conversation, by all means, please send it on over to them. They would love you for it. Okay, we would too. Also, please head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a review. Your feedback is very important to us. You could find us on Facebook and Twitter and online at This Epic Life. Thanks so much for listening, and until next week, glow in the